Moshpit passion, for the passion of music.
Unfortunately, our time is limited, so I skip our regular intro. But my name is Kai. I'm from Moshpit Passion, and thank you very much. To have the opportunity to do an interview with you about your record, and so I want to start also with my first question. And how would you describe the new record to someone who never had an idea about your musical history or about yourself? How would you describe the new record?
Oh, that's thankfully enough, not a complicated question at all. Depending on that person, what they know about Western popular culture, I could say it's somewhere between Blade Runner and Depeche Mode, with a slight bit of Black Sabbath thrown in the procedure. That's quite close to the fact.
Can I ask you, is it for you annoying when people like, Ville Valo is releasing a record, I know him from him, and everybody is asking more or less about your history and the past and not about, hey, your new solo record? Is it for you like, come on, man, I have something new, I want to talk about that, not about the past, and please skip questions like, what about a HIM reunion, something like that? How do you react to those questions?
Well, at the end of the day, I've been a solo artist for about a day, and I was with him for about 25 years, so it's understandable that people might be interested in it. Plus, if I wouldn't have been in the band HIM, I would not be here with the new album, and would probably not gain the interest of the people. So, like yourself. So I think it's definitely not a burden. I'm happy for what we did with him, and it's an incredible journey we went through. And also, I'm quite happy that we ended it the way we did. Being still friends, not at each other's throats quite yet. And it's an important part of my life. But yet again, as you just said, I'm here with the new album, so it's not a greatest hits of HIM songs. Although on the forthcoming tour, we will be performing a ton of HIM songs as well, because I think that's important, because this is a transitional point in life, or time for me personally, from a moth into a butterfly, I guess.
If I get it right, you wrote everything by your own. Is it right?
Yeah, I always write the stuff by myself, but I on this one I recorded it by myself. And I played all the instruments, and I produced the album too. And so it was a proper solo album.
And my question to this is, where do you see the advantages and disadvantages to do everything by your own? For instance, also when it comes to a feedback, usually you have a band, you're sending stuff to them, they're giving you a feedback.
It is definitely that you lose the brainstorming sessions that usually happen with bands, and then you lose the hanging out, the sort of like camaraderie between band members, because there's a lot of time in the life of a band that you don't actually spend by playing music. There's a lot of waiting and a lot of figuring things out, and a lot of cracking jokes and all that stuff. So that's why I'm so serious these days. I don't have a band around me, so it's just working solo and being all serious for about the whole of pandemic. But I think I think they're both good, and they're both valid ways. I wouldn't, I set up a challenge for myself to record this thing by myself, and I wanted to see, I never had to release it. I thought that, if it's going to be terrible, then I just figure something else out, But I like the way it sounded, and I thought that when you work by yourself, you don't have to compromise at all. There's no scheduling stuff. It's fairly easy to sort out schedules with yourself. So that was a good part, and the fact that I could lose myself in working on a music for as long as I wanted to, for as how many hours or how many days or months or whatever. And that's quite special. You can never do that with a band. So I thought that I got more intimate with music with the new album that I've ever done in the past with any other album. But then the other albums had the the band of brothers feel to them, because they happened as a team and as a little tribe that we put together back in the day. So they're both good, and I'm happy that I've been able to experience both. At this moment in time, I feel that this is more special because it sounds more like me. So, you know, there's no compromise. It's very undiluted, and it's very also for better or for worse. You know, I like the fact that if somebody doesn't like the album, I'm the one to blame. It's very easy, you know, because that's the way it is. If you don't like it, that's fine. You know, hopefully, you know, there's less people like that, but you can never tell in advance.
I want to ask about the recording process. I don't know the exactly time frame when you recorded stuff, but yeah, you mentioned a little bit earlier the topic COVID, also with the whole restrictions. For instance, here in Germany, it was like if you want, I don't know, to drive to your studio and record something, it was more or less not allowed. And I don't know, first, how it was for you, and second, when you were, let me say, in a creative mindset, like, yeah, I want to do something, and then there was like, no, stop, you have to do a pause from a month or a second month. So maybe that was for you also, I don't know, maybe difficult to to get back into the writing process and flow. Yeah, was something like that over the past years?
Well, I'm trying to figure out the time frame here. I started working on the album in late 2019, so it was a bit before the pandemic, and I was wise enough that the money I saved from the last tour of HIM, I put into my home studio. So I work from home, and that enabled me to work through the pandemic, because we had lockdowns as well here, and we had all these restrictions that you couldn't do this and you couldn't do that, and that also meant that it would have been impossible to put together a band. So I was kind of forced to do everything by myself. And so a lot of lucky accidents, I guess, in you know, thinking in terms of the album. But yeah, it was quite weird. And for, you know, and obviously work during the pandemic was quite depressing. I don't know anybody who would have had a great time during the pandemic. You know, it was quite painful and quite weird, and all the uncertainty and all that stuff. It was and not being able to see your parents, or in my case, not seeing my parents and stuff. So it hurt a ton. But yeah, I'm trying to see the positive, which was the fact that that kind of like forced me to work on the music and forced me to work from home and hopefully find a sound that is a bit different from the stuff that's going on these days. You know, it's not that sanitized, sort of like supermarket heavy metal or whatever you want to call it. It's a bit more weird than that. Maybe I'm just old. It's probably both.
What I found interesting is you said once that the logo for HIM, the Heartagram, it was one of the greatest output you ever had in your whole life. Now, with the new upcoming record, would you repeat this statement in the first place? And the second question to this is, do you also design the new logo of your solo project as well?
Yeah, well, the logo I'm using now is pretty much the same. There's just a couple of lines that have been changed. So yeah, I did that by myself, and I did the original, the Heartagram logo back in the day too. But I still think that they're because the cool thing about it is that the symbol traveled so well. It traveled across all genres. It didn't have anything to do with music anymore, and it spread like a virus. We didn't know where it's going to end up. So I thought that, you know, there was something really beautiful about it, and in that sense, something that was bigger than the band. And that's also the reason why we call our website and all the social media, whatever, it's never been him.com or whatever. It was always heartagram.com, the name of the symbol. And I'm still using the same symbol more or less, and the same .coms or whatever, Facebooks and stuff. I always felt that, you know, the Heartagram, the symbol, I'm like the that's like the Coca-Cola company, and I'm like the Sprite underneath with the music, or Dasani water, or whatever they have in the roster these days.
Yeah, I had to ask this because I'm a graphic designer, and when I studied graphic design, we were talking about logos, and of course logos in music. And I guess the logo, the Heartagram, is one of the most, let me say, from modern bands, most of the iconic logos which were designed over the past 25 years. Usually you have KISS logos, or this typeface, for instance, is Iron Maiden, but it's not Iron Maiden. It's some kind of social media app or something like that.
It's also regarding this, the logo is the fact that it doesn't say anything. There's no letters in it. So you do have like Blue Oyster Cult back in the 70s. They had a really cool logo. That's just a symbol. But that's why I found the Heartagram to be so powerful. That it doesn't say anything. You know, it is a combination of things that are very, very well known for Westerners, and especially for people who follow popular culture. You know, the whole how heart has been used as a symbol for such a long time, and then the pentagram, and everything that brings to mind. You know, both the 80s sort of heavy metal world, and then the more esoteric, the occult, and everything in between. And I thought that it's a good combination for a bunch of Finns who are so indecisive when it comes to music that they won't show whether they want to play, you know, the music of Chris Isaak or whether they want to be a part of Metallica. And so that's how it came to happen. You know?
I found interesting that you mentioned that the logo is some kind of a virus, and over the years it became, like I said, like an icon for some people. And I know people like the Jackass Crew or Bloodhound Gang, you were very close with you, and also Jimmy Pop released at least one or two records in the US back in the day, and also changed the name from him to her. And if you're thinking back now with today's technology, for instance, that you just use an app to reach people, and back in the day it was like creating a new band, not logo, but changing the band name, doing the artwork, creating also or founding at least a new record label. What do you think about today's technology, especially when it comes also to the pandemic? Now we are talking about Zoom, you have digital publication, let me say outlets. What do you think about? Could you imagine, or at least when back in the day, 20 years ago, you were at the point like, okay, we want to release that record, but we have to pay a lot of money, invest a lot of time. And today it's like a couple of clicks and the record, everybody in the world can get it more or less. Do you thought about that 20 years ago? Do you remember that?
No, well, you know, if you think a bit earlier than that, in the late 90s when we recorded our first album, it was done on tape. And the second album which is Razorblade Romance, on which we started using Heartagram, the symbol, which had the song Join Me in Death that became really big in Germany in the year 2000. That was done half on Pro Tools and half on tape. And that was still the time when CDs were selling, but nobody would make vinyls. It took us many, many years to be able to actually get a vinyl pressing of that album. And that was the time where you could make money off of record sales. So that's the thing that changed a lot, you know, along the way, from Napster onto the streaming platforms and all that stuff. So I think it's been incredibly interesting to be a part of, to be able to, or to be in a band that has seen the development firsthand. Because it's changed quite a bit, but it doesn't change how a band behaves, you know, how we play our instruments or whatever. I think that, you know, musically speaking, I think that the possibility of people working remotely so much these days, and people being able to work a lot by themselves anyway, we miss a lot of the camaraderie. We miss a lot of there's a lot of bands these days never been in a proper studio recording drums, when they never had strings in a proper, where people actually play strings like real people play real instruments, which is quite special because it is more than some of its parts. You know, it's the resonation, or the room resonating, and the engineers being there and putting the right mics up and blah. It's a work of art, and it's quite a pity that people are using just sample libraries. But I do the same, you know, because you need to get the job done one way or the other. So we'll leave the real stuff to Disney, I guess. but I think it goes, whatever keeps your creative juices flowing. And the greatest thing about the democratization of, in my case, in making music, is the fact that you can be whomever from wherever, and if you have a great idea, it's all yours. You can put it down and you can get it out, and everybody's willing to hear it. But then the problem is that there's so much stuff out. I think that's where record companies come in. I like them to be the filters. Or then again, the streaming medias like Spotify, the what do you call them? The people who do the playlists, who kind of like decide what you're hearing. They're the record labels of today, more or less. But it's like, remember MySpace when it started?
Definitely.
It was kind of cool at first, you know, you had interesting new things, but all of a sudden there was like everybody and their aunt was forming a band or a project or whatever. And then you couldn't like filter through all that stuff because nobody would have the time. So that's the problem with and it doesn't have, it's not only to do with music, it's the whole YouTube thing. There's so much information that people tend to, like myself at times, you know, you tend to like not even read the news properly anymore. You get like a headline, you get a bit of here and a bit of there. And I don't think it makes a healthy person. You know? So I like the smell of pages of a book. And I'm still old school when it comes to that.
I have a lot of questions left. Unfortunately, our time is running out. Manuel said, hey, we just have 3 minutes left, and I don't want to, more or less, how do you say, more delay the evening. So,
my sincerest apologies for being late.
No problem. Everything's fine. Maybe we get the chance to meet us in Cologne for the people out there. You will be on tour in Germany.
Yes.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you, and wish you all the best with your debut solo record, and have a great evening. See you next time.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Also the same for you and your family. Thank you very much.
Till next time. Thank you. Bye.
Moshpit passion, you know, for the passion of music.